Welcome to Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. I'm Dee Kelly, and I'm here with my co-host, Jim Shalley. We're a coach and a therapist who love talking about how inner work can help you live with more awareness, purpose, and freedom. We would like to apologize that this week's broadcast experienced some audio difficulties, and we hope it's not too distracting. In spite of that, we hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone, to Podcast Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. I am your co-host, Dee Kelly. Jim Shalley is here with me, and we enjoy spending some time talking about the things that occupy our vocational journey, but spill over into everything else we do in life as well.
It does.
So this particular episode, we are going a little bit deeper into one of the four, can we call them archetypes of how people use energy, how they live their lives, and maybe give you some insight as the listener to whether you fit into this particular archetype or whether you might need to find ways to access it in your life because its voice isn't giving you enough balance. The absence of it produces some issues, and too much of it can also produce some issues. But then give us a little introduction to what we refer to the dynamic feminine side, which is the transformer. What is this personality style look like?
Hey, let me give an example that will lead into it. So I had a client this week that came in. She's pretty relational, very, very, I would say, static feminine, where she gets a lot of stuff done, but she loves people. Well, she also runs a library in a high school. So, and they weren't cleaning the library, the cleaning people. And she said, I didn't want to hurt their feelings, but it just wasn't getting cleaned and I didn't know what to do. And so she said, finally, I got so upset. I pulled one of them aside and I said, when do you guys clean? And she said, I got so forceful and I asked them for a specific day when they're cleaning. And they said Mondays. I said, okay, then we'll clean the rest of the week, but we need you to clean on Mondays. And then she said, I went back to my office and I felt so guilty. And I went, oh, sure, of course you felt guilty. And she goes, why was that? I said, well, in my framework, you got in touch with a dynamic masculine who needed to get stuff done and hold people accountable and make progress. But your basic style is dynamic feminine, which is to get things done, but also to care about how it's affecting people. So, of course, it was very predictable for you to become strong with the cleaning crew, but then go to your office and feel bad about it, and then want to bake some cookies for them. So that's the kind of the integration of that. She said, but it's hard for me to get in touch with the dynamic masculine to hold people accountable. I said, of course it is. Your basic style is to err on the side of relationship first, and which she completely agreed with. I said, but occasionally we need to access the other. So to your point, if I'm all one style, then I identify what I'm lacking. Typically, I'll rely on other people. So, for example, with a dynamic feminine, if I'm static, I don't like change a lot, and I want to have some fun, what would I do?
You'd tap into somebody who produces that fun for you.
Absolutely. And then you'd have to work hard at not negating them and saying, we can't do that. No, you're gonna die. So that's why it's so important to be conscious, because to identify it first, I want to enjoy whatever it is. So I have to block the voice that would automatically throw up hurdles and say, that's too dangerous to do that.
So I'm going to throw an alternative to you as opposed to blocking the voice. Is there at least some value in bringing that other voice into consciousness and say, I hear you?
Yeah, they could express that voice. Absolutely. That's a great point. They could basically say, I'm really hesitant right now, but I'm going to trust you because I want to enjoy the boat ride or whatever it is. But then the other person, then if they're wise and they're aware of it, they won't be as perhaps dynamic feminine as they would have been.
Yeah.
Which is the balance.
I think an example, if you're going to use the librarian, that if that guilt, she feels terrible, all of that comes up, is to, I get that because that's not my natural place to be. And there are reasons for that. And I appreciate that guilt, but I'm not going to live into the guilt. It's there for another reason, and it doesn't fit real well.
Right. And it was interesting because when I pointed out to the client that dynamic, they kind of relaxed and said, "Oh yeah, that makes sense as to why I feel bad about it." I said, "Yeah, because again, you're initiating an energy that you know needs to happen." I said, "The real growth is to realize it needs to happen and don't wait until you get so frustrated that you implement it out of frustration as opposed to what needs to happen."
Yeah. Would you say that the individual that often is willing to say what nobody else is wanting to say, even though they think it, would be that feminine dynamic?
Yeah. I would say, yeah, stand-up comedians, they're dynamic feminine. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we maybe backtrack a little bit to family of origin? If there's a child in a family, what are some of the characteristics you're going to see in a child that style is beginning to blossom in them? And in fact, if you're a parent and you're not sensitive to that, you may not consider blossoming the appropriate.
Absolutely true. You try to squelch it as fast as you can. Obviously, they're into everything. They're energetic. They see new opportunities. They're pushing the limits. They're a lot of fun, but they're also exasperating because they're still testing all the limits and they don't think about how it's going to affect. That's why typically the masculine energy or the boys get labeled with that more than the girls, but it's still a lot of girls have really strong dynamic feminine energy. Talk to any mother of a 12-year-old daughter who has that energy. Yeah.
Do you think it's true that children, though there may be a predisposition and certainly a family dynamic that helps create styles of being, experiences where something isn't rewarded, but it's pushed back on collectively by people you respect and love? But do you think that children typically experiment with those different styles?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's why, both of us are convinced it's in all those energies are in us. And that's, in my mind, the number one job of a parent is to navigate that. Because if they're too much dynamic feminine, a static mother will come in and kind of reorganize it, push back a little bit, talk them through it, say you can't really get away with all these things that you're doing. So it's developing the other sides. But yeah, I do think the parent involvement is crucial to balance it out. But think about it. If the parent isn't aware, they're going to have a bias. So they're going to push their kids towards one particular way of being. And then the kid wants to please, so they'll squelch or not get as in touch with the other aspects, rather than realizing, okay, where do you need to be right now, son or daughter? And that's where I think a parent manages the emotions and the characteristics. Yeah.
I'll give you what I think is a classic parent-child conflict, and that is where a parent has tried to put a structure in place in the home, and their effort is well-meaning because it's trying to bring order to mess. So this is mostly the masculine static, the one who organizes things.
Right.
And the dynamic feminine, the child, it doesn't make sense to them. And they will verbally question. Sometimes they'll be acting out just to push against that system. But when the parent is challenged that this, whatever the rule is, doesn't make sense, it's a moment where if the person is so bought into that it's part of their identity, it's really difficult to actually hear, oh, I think you're right. It doesn't make sense. And so that push-pull can go on for a long time.
And again, that's why self-awareness as a parent is so important. But think about it. When do people have children? When they're younger. And so they aren't as aware as they would be later on. That's why grandparents, even though they don't spend full time with the kids, have a different approach. They're going to entertain more of the personality style, probably, than when they parented. As a grandparent yourself, I'm sure that's probably true.
I think one of the things that contributes to that is usually grandparents are able to give more attention, focused attention to the child, because if you're in your 20s or 30s, you are managing multiple kids and jobs and taking care of the home. Usually all of those pulls on your life have decreased as a grandparent. And so you can be more attentive, far more so than you could when you were a parent.
And entertain their different personalities because you don't have to live with them.
You only have a couple hours.
That's right. And you can put up with the dynamic feminine for 2 hours.
Yeah. It's like going to the librarian and saying, I'd like to check out this kid for just 2 hours.
And that's why grandparents that watch the kids longer than that, they'll be in this bind of doing some parenting things because the kid will push boundaries. And then does the grandparent parent, or do they, say, I've got to go now?
Yeah. Let's take this back to a relationship. Two people, the relationship is growing. The transformer, this feminine dynamic energy, is magnetic. I mean, it is attractive to be around somebody who is not only providing the energy, but typically it's a fun energy. Now, it can be reactive, but more like a prophetic voice who calls out something that's wrong in a system. Mm-hmm. But often it's attractive because the individuals say what somebody else might not be willing to say. There's a spontaneity that is very attractive. What happens when that becomes irritating?
Well, obviously it's too extreme. They're caught up in their own ego, and they don't read the room at all.
Yeah, lack of sensitivity.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't care how it comes across. They're so into it that they're annoying most of the people in the room, but the people in the room don't speak up because it's been so entertaining. And that's where a spouse will typically, elbow the other one and says, okay, enough is enough. Because again, if you're in that complete dynamic feminine mode, you're just having a great time. You drink too much, you say too much, you do too much, you just do too much. That's the extreme. And that can lead into all kinds of negative behaviors if it's not tempered.
And can create chaos for others if they try and come behind and up some of the pieces that are left from that.
And then if that dynamic feminine is really in that mode, and then they get shut down by what I would say is the static masculine, then they'll pout because they're in little kid mode. And so that's why what we're talking about, I'm sure my perspective and your perspective, it makes so much sense to bring balance and saying, okay, where do I need to be right now? I've enjoyed this party. I've had a good time, but my wife or my husband has just pulled at my arm and said, okay, enough. And then you go, I should have known that. I knew if they pay attention internally, if they have any kind of wisdom or self-awareness, they'll know they've crossed a line. And I think I've said before, you always look at who people are attracted to. The dynamic feminine, they will almost always be attracted naturally to a static masculine. I mean, it could be a static feminine as well, but something that's trying to pull them and contain their energies. Just like their attraction would be trying to pull them to some fun. I mean, the classic thing is we talked about a few minutes ago. If I'm on a motorcycle and you hate it, but you'll get on it because you want to experience the ride of it just because I love it so much, then I'm not going to go 80 miles an hour. I'm going to be really careful about how I do it.
Yeah, that sensitivity to the implications of who you are applies to all of the characteristics.
Absolutely. I would say just a personal example with you, it's like when you're with your kids and you're pushing the limits, you're much more careful than you are when you're by yourself because you're a nut when you're by yourself. If you ride a Razor or a four-wheeler by yourself, completely different energy than if you have one of your grandkids on the back of it, which is very appropriate, by the way. So, but I'm sure we've scared your daughters over the years with some of the things that we've done. So,
yeah, I think that's actually true. In a family system, I have observed at times where there is this draw to introduce somebody into a family of origin, to date somebody or marry somebody that you can bring into your family of origin that can say the things that you can't say. And sometimes that's the dynamic side coming through in another person and they're kind of using that person as a substitute for themselves. And that works well unless the person goes too far, and then it makes everyone uncomfortable and creates tension in all sorts of ways.
Well, again, it's kind of like you're an expert in the other person's family system.
Very true. Yeah. So, carry this notion that you just described a little bit further, the issue of balance. Let's start with the person who is the transformer, and they come to the realization that they like who they are, but realize that they sometimes bring trouble into other people's lives, and that catches their attention, or they realize that something's missing. What kinds of things might be missing in that person's life that would bring them to see you, that would cause conflict and create a moment where they're seeking help from somebody else?
The dynamic feminine. Well, that's a great question, because most of the time they don't seek out therapy until the static personality in their lives takes them, forces them to. Again, the extreme is addictions. They're typically addicts, so to the extreme. So they're in trouble at work, they're in trouble at home. Usually they have to be in some form of trouble. They've gone too far. And I think that's why the maturing process, I mean, is it possible that people that have that energy naturally in midlife will get to a place where they realize they've created so much chaos that they might seek that out? Yes. But most of the time in midlife, someone has encouraged them or almost forced them to seek therapy. I mean, think about it. If it's fun and it's working, why stop?
Yeah. That's not only a great question in this space where we're describing it, but it's also what a person would say if their spouse brings them in.
Absolutely. It's like finally this week I had a couple that he's a recovering addict, 1.5 years sober. His wife has enabled him for a long time. She's overfunctioned. She's the classic enabler. And they came in and the sessions have been basically her expressing her frustrations because he doesn't listen to her throughout the week because he works 80 hours a week. And so it's the one time that she has a captive audience because I'm there. And so she unloads on him. So then it's not obviously very productive from that perspective. So I finally this week was able to say one thing that she identified, that if she did this, that she would feel heard. And so I was very forceful. I said, well, I won't see you again until you make an appointment and do what she just asked you to do, that makes sense, but you don't really want to do it. And you're probably saying yes to me because I'm the therapist and you're patting me on the head a little bit. I said, but I'm not going to see you until you do something that's going to let her know that you hear her and that she has really done so much for you over the years with your kids in your life. He agreed to it, but we'll see what happens. But that's a case of where there's no point in entertaining a conversation with an extreme dynamic feminine who basically his comment is, well, that's what my dad did. Well, my dad did, son. To which I say, did you like your dad? And he'll say, well, no. I said, okay. Does that say anything? So again, he's the extreme. She's the other extreme of the static masculine, static feminine, because she's very nurturing as well. But I had to do something to get his attention. And so we'll see what happens. But that's the extreme case of you can't make any progress until they decide, wait a minute, I'm hurting my wife in this case.
Yeah. I'm familiar with a story where a person was told, I'm offering you this job and you've lost your previous job, but I'm not going to give you this job until you go to AA meetings throughout the course of this month. This ultimatum where you've crashed and I'm not rescuing. You've got an energy that is very winsome and a personality that people like to be around, but you have a track record here. And if you want an income, you're going to have to do something different. That's it's the crisis moment. I've come to an impasse.
And I, as a therapist, I had to realize that I was getting caught up in the system because in that sense, I was trying to be compassionate towards him because he's come from an incredibly addicted system, who's been enabled his whole life. He's in his 30s, I think, with 2 small kids. And she's come from this place where she's enabled for 5 years and is exhausted. So I know that if I keep seeing them, what I'm basically doing is I'm just going to get caught up in the system. So I had to be more forceful about pushing him to the static side of himself to see if he can do it. If he can't do it, then the only other thing is that she has to make some serious, in my mind, serious choices.
Yeah. I think there's a time in a transformer's journey where it feels to me that transformers often live this externally. Like it is in some ways, a lifestyle that's a projection of some of the things that are going on inside. Mm-hmm. And fun, energy, spontaneity all provides a stimulus as it sometimes leads to addiction. The constant need to have something that tells me I'm not numb. Do you think that as time progresses, there's a recognition that the outward projection is also saying something about what's missing inside?
That's a great point. It all comes back to has the world or the universe created enough things to give me reason to pause and to self-reflect.
Yeah.
Remember the dynamic, either side of it, feminine or masculine, they don't pause to self-reflect, but they will almost always have personal relationships in their lives that have that trait. And so when you point it out to them and say, okay, they have that trait, you're attracted to that trait in them, that's what you have to internalize. But yeah, no, they keep moving forward. And to get them to self-reflect, their life almost always has to come to a crisis point, either internally or externally, by an addiction that I've hit bottom, or my relationships are going to leave me, or I've blown them all apart. That's the hard part of the dynamic side, period. Whereas the static side, it's hard to get them to move beyond their stuckness. That's why it's all inside of us, and we got to figure out.
And I think when a dynamic personality has a very, very close relationship, typically a spouse, but a very close relationship, can also be an adult child who no longer needs their energy because they tapped into their own inner side. Mm-hmm. They, for years, as you described, enabled.
Absolutely. That's a great point. That is a great point.
All of a sudden, they become healthier and more balanced. And I don't need that in you.
Absolutely.
There's a moment emotionally.
Oh, geez. I've had so many, and again, this is more stereotypical, but the wife who cannot rely on the husband's energy anymore because it's too spontaneous, they will create a life. They'll go back to school, they'll get a job, they'll do these things, and all of a sudden they're meeting with their girlfriends. I have a case right now where she plays tennis every day, and she has a great life, but no longer relies on her husband, who unfortunately has got more into addictions to handle his life. And yeah, he's saying she doesn't want to be around me. Well, yeah, she created her own life. To your point, it is so threatening, but it happens. That crisis point happens in so many conscious and unconscious ways, but that's a classic example of it, where the wife will finally, kids are gone, they're bored, their husband's no longer fun. He's not even funny anymore, even though he may still be funny to other people, not to her.
Yeah, that's a great point, because she no longer needs that for fulfillment and has found her own humor within that changes the whole dynamic.
Or, unfortunately, the dysfunctional side is it found humor in someone else.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
It gives more attention to the inner journey and finds that incredibly attractive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's like for a man who has that energy and loves to tell stories, they've run through those stories with everybody in their lives, and they'll be depressed because they no longer have an audience. Years ago, I had a client that was going to move to Florida, and I basically said, because he came in depressed, he was in his 60s. I said, well, this is great. You're going to retire. You have a whole new audience. And sure enough, he went down there and moved in, I think, the Villages, and he created a whole audience telling all of his stories, and his wife would just roll her eyes and go some other room. But he loved it because, again, but the problem is it sustained his basic approach, and that may have an end point as well if he lives long enough.
It's also true that it reaches an end point and nothing changes. Like a relationship we're together, it's convenient, but it's ended. It just hasn't resulted in us leaving each other. And that has its own dynamic long term.
Yeah. And you know this as we age, if you're wise at all, you become more of a spectator. So that if you had the dynamic feminine energy and you were the life of the party in your family system, and now you're in your 70s and your son or grandson or daughter, they're funny and they come in and they take over the room, then you learn to step back and enjoy that. A person who doesn't do that will still be competitive and they'll not want to go to the family parties and stuff because they can't live that part out.
Yeah, the competitive nature of that is kind of a fascinating dynamic, particularly within a family system or a work group where there is a vying for that.
Yeah.
So you started this conversation. I'd like you to take it a little bit further. The other styles, the static styles and then the masculine dynamic style, what are the ways by which those individuals become aware of that dynamic feminine, that transformer voice within them? Sometimes somebody becomes aware of it just because of who they're attracted to, but there are other reasons why you might need it in order to accomplish something, bring about a shift in your own journey because it has a real strong energy to it. Can you help us a little bit for those who aren't transformers, whether or not they live with one? What is it that they are looking for or that they're missing out on that you can bring to their attention? Have you ever noticed that you aren't able to do this or something like that?
Yeah. For me, the phrase that I use with people that they come in stuck, I'll use the phrase, maybe you need a bold move. And they'll go, they'll ask, what do you mean? I said, well, maybe to get out of the mindset or the feeling of being stuck, you need to do a bold move. Like, do you like your job? And they'll typically say, well, no, it's not really. And their kids are maybe gone or something's changed in their lives that kept them from identifying their need for more spontaneity. And I said, a bold move typically happens consciously or unconsciously. I said, early in our lives, there's a lot of bold moves that happen that we aren't aware of that are as bold as they really are. Whether it's a job change or getting married, all those are bold moves, but they're pretty unconscious. I said, midlife, you bring an awareness to your life that says, okay, I'm feeling kind of like stagnant. So what's the bold move? Well, I guess I could change jobs. No, I can't do that. That'd be crazy. I'm only 5 years from retirement. They talk themselves out of it rather than realizing, okay, if I don't take charge of the bold move, it's going to happen one way or the other. And I think if I can get them to see that and then notice what the bold moves have been in their lives, that they have to acknowledge, yeah, that was a bold move. And so why'd you do it back then? Well, I got a promotion and they moved me across country. I said, yeah, but it was still a bold move. The company just made it, not you.
Yeah, good call.
And I think that's the real challenging thing. And it could be as simple as go to the health club every day instead of like you sign up and then go 2 weeks and then quit. So the bold move could be simply staying disciplined with something you need to do. I have a guy right now, he's in his 50s, he's overweight, and the bold move for him was to be more aware of, and I gave him this phrase, then feels better than food tastes good. So he's been saying that to himself. And he said, I feel more in the moment. I said, yeah, that's the bold move, is being in the moment, knowing what you're eating, what the effect is going to have on you, and just your energy level. That's the bold move. But it doesn't look, bold sounds like, whoa, rather than, no, it's a bold move to stay consistent with it, especially for someone who's he's much more of a lot more of a transformer. And that bold move seems weird because in his mind, the bold move is like, let's have a party, let's be crazy. No, the bold move is to bring more structure to your life. And that's another way of looking at it.
Would you agree that sometimes we think of bold moves that impact other people, but sometimes a bold move is to simply say, on my own, I'm going to go do this thing this adventure, I'm going to schedule something that I wouldn't normally do. I wouldn't normally do this for myself, but it feels like maybe it's spontaneous enough and I'm worth it. Sometimes I go sailing by myself rent a boat, go out. Or I've done windrunners by myself just to.
We still need to buy those. We still need to buy those, by the way. I'm just saying.
Is that your bold move? Go do that.
I know. I'm doing my bold move today, so.
But I think it's a statement to myself of, I enjoy this. It's spontaneous. It is energizing, invigorating, and here I go.
And you also, if you're like me, you say, okay, it probably would be more enjoyable to share it, but I've got to get in touch with how enjoyable it is for me just to do it. Yeah, by myself. Yeah.
The doing it with others is doing it for others?
Yes, absolutely true.
Yeah. So a combination of those. I mean, sometimes doing it for yourself leads to that wonderful relational experience of, and I enjoy doing it with others now.
Or you connect with people that are doing it as well, and they love doing it, and you love doing it, and then we all love doing it. So
yeah. I love your adage, and I'm going to mess it up, so I'm going to ask you to do it about if you're wanting to find somebody that likes what you like.
Oh yeah, if you want to marry a San Diego Padres fan, you have to go to the game by yourself and meet someone who's there by themselves, because then you know they're a genuine fan and they're not just there to please you or you're there to please them. Yeah, I use that analogy all the time with people. It's like if I start to date someone, I use this with people that are divorced and starting to date. I said, on the third date, you love to go to Home Depot on a Saturday night. Take her or him to a Home Depot on a Saturday night. See how they like it on the third date.
And the first date, they'll go with you anywhere.
Exactly. Absolutely. And at some point, if you want to meet somebody who likes home improvement, go there by yourself. They're there by themselves. And yes, you'll know they like it. Or they're not there just trying to buy something because their spouse made them go do it. I don't know. But yeah, that's how you know there's a natural energy. And again, it's got ups and downs to it, but that's how you know I'm not dragging you to a sporting event when you don't really want to go.
I think the Home Depot workers might think you're a little creepy, but
yeah, this is our third date. Yeah, she stayed in the car, so I'm thinking this is our last date.
Yeah, actually, that exploration of those that are like you, those that are different than you, how you're attracted, why you're attracted. That's a great discussion maybe for a future episode to explore how we become more aware of those attractions and what they mean about our projection. Eventually, we need to spend some time on that projection side in a future episode. This has been great, though. Next week, we'll dig into another personality approach that takes us in a completely different direction. But I hope the audience is beginning to see how all of this intertwines and leads us to greater health if we'll pay attention to it.
Me too. Great.
With you.
Yep. Thanks.
That's it for this episode of Therapy, Coaching, and Dreams. If you're enjoying the podcast, we'd love for you to follow, rate, or share it with someone who might appreciate it as well. Thanks for being here, and until next time, keep growing, stay curious, and take good care of yourself.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff.